Okay, so now that we've got everything set up for our toned paper, or we have toned our paper, so we've toned our paper, we're going to sharpen our pencils, our charcoal pencils, our HB and our 2B, just like how we did with our other pencils. It's a little harder because the charcoal is inherently softer, so you just have to be a little bit more, just a little slower with how you pull that out, the wood, whittling the wood down. But it's really important actually with the charcoal pencils to get as long as you possibly can, because you're doing so much shading with it that you're constantly going to be sharpening your pencil if you don't have a longer lead. So that's what I'm doing now. And then we're going to talk about doing the stepped transition value scale, and then we'll talk about the smooth transition value scale if I don't ruin sharpening this pencil, of course. All right. So again, just be a little slower because the graphite is so much softer, so it's easier to kind of like chop it off. All right, so I've got a little bit of a longer point now. That's better. So this is my 2B, and I have my HB, and then you also have your kneaded eraser. This guy is a friend of yours for sure. And then you want to have an extra sheet of paper to put your hand so you don't end up smearing everything. So I'm going to go over this right now. I always start with my darkest darks and then I jump to my light. So I'm going to start with my 2B charcoal pencil here. And this is going to be my darkest dark here. You can kind of see the lines very faint for my step transition. So there's going to be a bit of layering with this. And also creating these value scales is really important because it becomes like a map to then dealing with when we get into shading in general. A map to find your various values. That's what I meant. We'll talk about that later. So this project is actually part of your grade. I think it's 5%. So try to take your time with it and really work on how the pencils, the charcoal pencils are working for you. Where you might need to slow down a bit so it isn't too choppy. But and occasionally you have to kind of blow off the excess. So you can tell I'm working on the floor, I think. If I can sweep this up easily, so I'm not worried about it. After I'm done, I'll clean the floor with like a wet paper towel and pick up all the charcoal dust so it doesn't float around. Because again, it's not the healthiest thing to be inhaling. But you know, it will take 20 years to get sick from it, so I think we're okay today. Okay, so I'm trying to get this as solid as I can. And it is my darkest dark. Okay, so now that I've created my darkest dark with my 2B, and I could come in and actually make this a hell of a lot more solid than I have it, and I will later, but let's move on so you guys can draw. Okay, so then I take my kneaded eraser, I get it clean, I get it to like something like this, maybe flatten it out, and then I can brush it over this and lighten as much as possible this value. I could try to get it lighter by coming in with my nylon eraser like this here and maybe try to lift out some of that value there. So this becomes my lightest light. Get that off. So then I've got a light light. I've got my dark dark. I've got my light light. Now this center one is going to be my mid-tone, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I might end up shading over it, I don't know, but I want to have a clear transition from dark, mid-tone dark, mid-tone, mid-tone light. Okay, so in order to, I'll continue with my 2B, but for this darker mid-tone, but I'm not going to press super hard. I'm actually going to come in a lot lighter. You can tell, I mean, it's just dark. It's inherently darker than the HB. H stands for hard. B stands for bold. So bold means, so if it's a 2B, it's a lot softer charcoal, and which in turn makes it a lot darker. So the higher you go up in the Bs, which I think they go all the way up to 6B in charcoal pencils, the higher you go up in your numbers in the Bs, the softer the charcoal, the darker the effect. And you can, if you end up getting too dark, you can take your kneaded eraser and kind of move that around to lift out some of the darkness, but I think it's okay. I can tell that from here to here it's a different value. I might actually just take my kneaded eraser real quick and again get it clean and maybe just lift out some of the values here and just lighten it a little bit. Now it's a bit dirty now, which is good, because then I can use that dirt and kind of smear it over. Okay. And now again, I want to make it really even. So I'll just be a bit more deliberate with my shading and come in a little slower. You will find that your 2B charcoal pencil is significantly darker than your HB charcoal pencil. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to deal with my HB charcoal pencil and darken this up, but I don't want it to be darker than that, but I might end up shading on this. I think I'm going to. Yeah, I am. So you can tell I'm using the same amount of pressure with my hand to the page, but it's significantly lighter, is it not? And again, I don't want to rush it. I want to kind of slow down a little bit and get a nice even tone, even value. You might, I think I spoke about this last week, you might find that the HB charcoal is a little less forgiving in terms of, like, there might be some kind of like harder chunks in it, and so it might be hard to get the value out of it. Sometimes you'll have to just re-sharpen it to get those lumps out. But we'll talk about that if that arises for you. Okay, so the idea is that I can see a clear delineation between my 5-stepped value scales, all right? So I've got my dark, I've got a darker midtone, I've got my midtone, and then this is my light midtone, that's my lightest area. So I'm going to actually leave the charcoal as the reductive charcoal is that, but actually I could just come in and do a very light rendering. Because remember, the vine charcoal just falls right off the page. It's really easy to lift out. The charcoal pencils stick to the page a lot more. There's more of like a binding agent in it than the vine charcoal. Vine charcoal is just charcoal. Okay, so that's fairly easy. You can label them value step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That might be helpful to you. If not, don't. But let's talk about the smooth transition value scale. We'll start off with our darks and we'll work our way to the light. And we will have the idea is that you're going to have a smooth transition from dark to light as you go along. So there won't be these kind of abrupt moments of being stopped. So there's going to be a lot of layering. And this probably will take a little bit longer. You can see how, I mean, I've sharpened this pencil and it's already starting to dull down. So having the longer charcoal point is really very beneficial, because then you're not stopping to sharpen constantly. You can think about going in other directions, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, to build up your values. And I do this one first because it becomes a guiding marker for how to, like, okay, I'm getting close to the edge of this one. Now I'm going to start to transition. And I do want to get all the way up to the edge of my tape. And remember, this is going to create some charcoal dust, so if you're concerned about the carpet that you're drawing on or the table that you're drawing on, whatever the surface, think about putting down a drop cloth of sorts. Okay, so as I come into this darker mid-tone, as I seem to take to calling it, I'm kind of coming in a little bit more circular with my shading. And I'm layering a bit more. Okay, so as I come over here, I'm going to get really light with the pressure of my hand to the page. And I don't want to just stop there. I want to, I don't want to be like, okay, from here to here, a smooth transition. Like, no, I want it to be really gradual. So again, I'm kind of coming into this middle area. And just really lightly layering up a bit. So I kind of end up going back and forth. If you notice, like when I was over here, I was like, oh shoot, I got to get darker over here. So then I go over here. And then I want to make sure this is really smooth. So I kind of keep going back and forth between the different values. Try to, really be patient with yourself and not go quickly to like rush through it. I know it's easier said than done, but try to just get lost in the fact that you're just shading and you're not worried about drawing anything. You're just worried about, am I going from dark to light in a smooth transition way? One thing that'll help is if you like when you're working and you're like, okay, is it a smooth transition? Take a photo of it and see if it's working out or not. Okay, so let's talk about dealing with the light. Because if you take a photo, you start to see it in a different way. Just like how when we post it on our discussions and we talk about it, it looks different because it's removed from you. So let's lift out some of the highlight here. I want to get my white back in. I'm going to use my nylon eraser to lift out. And again, I'm almost drawing with my eraser, okay? So I'm doing this, and then as I come out, I'm getting a little bit lighter as I move towards this mid-tone. But I can press harder here because I want it to be really, really light. Okay. That nice and smeared. All right, so then let's go to my HB. And you know what? I'm kind of noticing it's a bit darker right here. I'm going to lift this out a little bit because it's a bit too distracting. Okay, that's a little better. So let's layer with my HB. I'm going to come back over here. Remember, it's a harder graphite, so it kind of starts to fill in the spaces of that kind of grainy quality that the softer charcoal has. Maybe I'll layer with my HB over here and see if that does anything. Is it darkening it too much? Can I possibly get this darker? Now I'm working over into this one, right? Still using my HB, not pressing really hard. And again, you'll probably want to squint your eyes and blur it all out and see if it's getting, if I got too dark here. I actually think I kind of did. It's a little sloppy there. So again, I'm keeping my eraser dirty and kind of smudging it. I can use that to make a smooth transition as well. Alright, so then I probably need to come back in and layer here. I'm still with my HB doing layering. It's really important, the pressure of your hand to the page. Just really lightly scratching the surface here. Okay. All right. So that is the smooth transition one. Wow, it was 25 minutes. And I think I rushed it a little bit. Maybe I should have slowed down a little. Anyway, now it's your turn. You guys do this, and then we'll talk about drawing the sphere.